This isn't revenge. This is justice.
The jammed door fought me like it had a personal grudge. 2 in the morning, and I'm wrestling with warped wood and rusted hinges in my garage, trying to fix what 20 years of Maine winters had broken. That's when I heard it, the soft buzz of Rena's work phone from the living room. If she's working at this hour, I'm a Red Sox pitcher, I muttered, wiping grease off my hands with an old rag. My name's Tom Granger, and I fix things for a living. Cabinets, doors, marriages, though I'm starting to think that last one might be beyond repair. At 41, I've got calloused hands, a bad back, and a wife who's been acting stranger than a cat in a thunderstorm. The phone buzzed again. Then again. Rena was upstairs, dead asleep after another one of her exhausting days at the insurance office. Funny how someone who sits behind a desk all day comes home more tired than a guy who's been swinging a hammer since sunrise. I walked into the living room, my work boots heavy on the hardwood I'd installed myself 3 summers ago. The phone sat on the coffee table, screen glowing like a tiny beacon of trouble. The messages kept coming. Colin. Can't stop thinking about this afternoon, Colin. You felt so good. Colin. When can we do it again? My stomach dropped like I'd stepped off a cliff. Colin Mercer. I knew that name. Rena's work friend. The guy who'd been picking up our 11-year-old daughter, Katie, from school when I was stuck on job sites. Uncle Colin, Katie had called him just last week. Mom says he's like family. Yeah, real family-like. I picked up the phone with shaking hands. There were photos, videos, timestamps from yesterday afternoon when Rena claimed she was in back-to-back meetings. The cheap motel on Route 1 looked familiar in the background of one particularly graphic shot. My wife of 15 years, my high school sweetheart, the mother of my child, giggling like a teenager while some ex-jock real estate agent put his hands where only I was supposed to touch. The phone slipped from my fingers, clattering onto the coffee table. Upstairs, Rena stirred but didn't wake. She'd always been a heavy sleeper. Came in handy when Katie had nightmares as a toddler. Apparently, it also came in handy when you were cheating on your husband. I stood there in my own living room, surrounded by furniture I'd built and walls I'd painted, feeling like a stranger in my own life. The grandfather clock in the corner, a wedding gift from my grandmother, ticked away the seconds of my marriage's end. 23 years I'd known Rena Sullivan, 15 married, 1 beautiful daughter, a house we'd bought as newlyweds and slowly made into a home. And she was throwing it all away for Colin Mercer, a guy who sold overpriced condos to out-of-state retirees and still wore his high school championship ring. I pocketed the phone and headed back to the garage. But I wasn't thinking about fixing doors anymore. I was thinking about fixing the situation. Permanently. The tools hanging on my pegboard looked different now, not like instruments of creation, but weapons of justice. My grandfather's old claw hammer caught the overhead light, its worn handle smooth from decades of honest work. But this wasn't about violence. This was about strategy, about patience, about making sure that when the dust settled, I'd be the one left standing. I pulled out a notebook from my workbench drawer and started writing. Names, dates, times, evidence. If Rena wanted to play games, she'd pick the wrong opponent. I might just be a carpenter, but I knew how to plan a project from foundation to finish. And this project was going to be my masterpiece. 3 days later, I was sitting across from Elliot Hatch in his cramped office above Murphy's Tavern. The place smelled like cigarettes and disappointment, which seemed about right for a private investigator in a dying Maine town. You want dirt? You gotta dig in the mud, pal, Elliot said, leaning back in his squeaky chair. He was maybe 55, with gray stubble and eyes that had seen too much of humanity's ugly side. Question is, how dirty are you willing to get? As dirty as it takes, I replied, sliding $300 across his desk. I need photos, documentation, everything. Elliot pocketed the cash without counting it. Your wife and this Colin character, they being careful? About as careful as teenagers, I said. They think I'm too stupid to notice. Good. Stupid is easier to catch. He opened a filing cabinet and pulled out a camera with a telephoto lens. This baby can shoot clear pictures from 200 yards, silent as death. That evening, I started my new hobby, surveillance. Turns out, following your cheating wife is like any other skill. You get better with practice. Rena claimed she was working late again, but her car was parked outside Flanagan's bar by 6:30. Through the window, I watched her laugh at something Colin said, her hand resting on his thigh under the table. She was wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. The one she claimed made her feel fat. Apparently, it made Colin feel something else entirely. I took pictures with Elliot's camera, the telephoto lens bringing their betrayal into sharp focus. Every smile, every touch, every kiss when they thought nobody was watching. The camera's memory card filled up with evidence of my marriage's corpse. But the real goldmine came when I decided to have a chat with Sheila Morrison, Rena's best friend and coworker. Sheila had always been a gossip and a drunk, which made her the perfect target. I found her at Murphy's Tavern on Friday night, 3 drinks deep and complaining to anyone who'd listen about her ex-husband's alimony payments. "Tom," she slurred when she saw me, "where's your better half tonight?" "Working late again?" I said, sliding onto the bar stool next to her. "You know how dedicated she is." Sheila snorted. "Dedicated. That's one word for it." I bought her another whiskey and waited. Drunks always talk if you give them enough time and booze. "You know," Sheila said after her 4th drink, "I keep telling Rena she's playing with fire. But she says Colin's a god in bed, not like—" She stopped, realizing what she was about to say. "Not like what, Sheila?" "Nothing. I'm drunk. Ignore me." But I didn't ignore her. I kept buying drinks and asking innocent questions until she told me everything. How the whole office knew about the affair. How Rena bragged about Colin's performance. How they'd been using company credit cards to pay for their hotel rooms. I recorded every word on my phone's voice memo app. "Shame I only have a mortal income," I said when Sheila finished her drunken confession. She laughed so hard, she nearly fell off her stool. "You're funny, Tom. Too bad Rena doesn't appreciate you anymore." By closing time, I had enough gossip to fill a small book. Half the town already suspected what was happening. I was apparently the last to know, the classic betrayed husband, blind to his wife's betrayal. But not anymore. The next morning, Elliot called with an update. "Got your photos," he said, "and brother, they're not holding back. You want me to deliver them or you want to pick them up? I'll come get them." The USB drive contained 47 photographs and 3 videos. Rena and Colin in his BMW behind the old Walmart. Rena and Colin at the Seaside Motel. Rena and Colin in positions that would make an adult movie star blush. I stared at the images on Elliot's computer screen, feeling nothing. The anger had burned out, replaced by something colder and more dangerous. Calculation. "What's your next move?" Elliot asked. "I'm going to destroy them," I said simply. "Both of them. Completely." Elliot nodded approvingly. "Now you're thinking like a professional." I drove home with the USB in my pocket, already planning phase 2 of my revenge. Rena was in the kitchen making dinner, humming some pop song like she didn't have a care in the world. "How was work today?" I asked, kissing her cheek like a dutiful husband. "Oh, same old boring meetings," she lied smoothly. "How about you?" "Just fixing things," I said. "You know me, I love fixing broken things." She smiled and went back to stirring her pasta sauce, completely unaware that I was about to fix the biggest broken thing in my life, our marriage. My Aunt Linda had always been the black sheep of the Granger family. Divorced 3 times, no kids, and a mouth that could strip paint. But she'd also been a legal clerk for 30 years before retiring, which made her exactly the ally I needed. "You want to hurt her? Hit her where it counts? Her future," Linda said, spreading documents across her kitchen table like battle plans. At 68, she was sharp as a tack and twice as mean. "I don't want to just hurt her," I said. "I want to make sure Katie and I are protected." Linda adjusted her reading glasses and pulled out a thick folder. "Smart boy. Here's what we're going to do. First, we're moving your assets into accounts she can't touch. The house goes into a trust with Katie as the beneficiary. Your business accounts get restructured. And this," she held up a legal document, "this is a post-nuptial agreement. If she signs it, she gets to keep her dignity. If she doesn't, the photos go public. She'll never sign. She will when she sees what happens if she doesn't." We spent the next 3 hours going through paperwork. Linda had connections at the bank, the courthouse, and half the law offices in town. By the time I left, Rena's ability to financially destroy me had been neutered. But I wasn't done yet. That night, I followed Colin to Murphy's Tavern. It was raining, one of those cold October downpours that made everything look gray and miserable. Perfect weather for what I had planned. Colin was drunk, celebrating some real estate deal with his buddies from the gym. They were loud, obnoxious, and completely unaware that I was watching from a corner booth. "Rena Granger," one of them said, raising his beer. "Lucky fool, Colin. She's a hot piece of A. And flexible," Colin replied with a laugh. "Her husband's a damn moron. Works with his hands all day while I work on his wife." They all laughed. I took out my phone and started recording. "Poor fool probably thinks she's working late," another guy said. "She is working," Colin said. "Working my—" I didn't need to hear the rest. I had enough. I followed Colin when he left the bar, staying 2 cars behind as he drove through the rain-slicked streets. He lived in one of those new condo developments he was always trying to sell, all glass and steel with no character. I parked across the street and watched him stumble up to his door. The GPS tracker I'd hidden in his wheel well, borrowed from Katie's old toy robot, would let me follow him anywhere. But tonight I had something else planned. I waited until his lights went out, then crossed the street with my toolkit. Colin drove a BMW 3 Series that he was more proud of than most people are of their children. Midnight blue with leather interior and custom rims. His baby. It took me 20 minutes to turn his baby into a nightmare. 4 flat tires, courtesy of my utility knife. Fish guts from my last weekend trip, carefully distributed throughout the ventilation system. And the pièce de résistance, his entire car, wrapped in industrial plastic wrap, the kind contractors use to protect furniture. I was back in my truck, parked across the street, when Colin came out the next morning. The sound he made when he saw his car wasn't quite human. It started as a gasp, rose to a wail, and finished as a roar of pure rage. He ran around the wrapped BMW like a man possessed, trying to find where the plastic started. When he finally got inside and started the engine, the smell of rotting fish hit him immediately. He came flying out of the car, gagging and cursing, his expensive suit rumpled and his hair a mess. I watched from my truck, deadpan. "Looks like your car caught something nasty," I muttered to myself. Colin spent the next hour trying to clean fish guts out of his air vents with his bare hands. By the time he gave up and called a tow truck, he was covered in slime and reeking like a fishing boat. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, but the real show was just beginning. I drove to Rena's office building and parked where I could see the entrance. At 9:47 a.m., she came rushing out, phone pressed to her ear. Even from a distance, I could see the panic on her face. She drove straight to Colin's condo, where the tow truck was loading his ruined BMW. The conversation between them was animated, lots of hand gestures and head shaking. Rena kept looking around like she expected someone to be watching. She was right. I took pictures of everything. Rena comforting Colin, Colin pointing at his car, the tow truck driver shaking his head in disgust. It was better than cable television. That evening, Rena came home distracted and jumpy. She kept checking her phone and looking out the windows. "Everything okay?" I asked innocently. "Fine," she snapped. "Just a stressful day at work. Anything I can help with?" She looked at me for a long moment, like she was trying to decide something. "No, it's nothing you'd understand." I nodded sympathetically. "Well, if you need to talk, I'm here. That's what husbands are for, right?" The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The bombshell arrived on a Tuesday morning in the form of my estranged brother Sam and a woman I'd hoped never to see again. I was having coffee in my kitchen when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Sam's beat-up Chevy in my driveway, and my stomach clenched. We hadn't spoken in 5 years, not since he'd stolen my girlfriend Jessica and disappeared to Boston. But it wasn't just Sam standing on my porch. Jessica was there too, looking older, but still beautiful, with a teenage boy beside her, who had my eyes and Sam's stubborn chin. "Hello, Tom," Sam said when I opened the door. "We need to talk." About what? But I already knew. The kid was maybe 16, with dark hair and a familiar way of standing with his hands in his pockets. "About your son," Jessica said quietly. The world tilted sideways. "My what?" "This is Danny," she continued. "He's 16. Do the math." I did the math. 16 years ago, Jessica and I had been together. We'd broken up when I caught her with Sam, and she disappeared shortly after. I'd met Rena 6 months later on the rebound. "You're telling me I have a son I never knew about?" "We need money," Sam said bluntly. "Danny's sick, leukemia. The treatments are expensive. And you thought you'd come shake down the successful brother? I asked. You're the only family we have left, Jessica said. Please, Tom. He's your blood. I looked at the kid, Danny, who hadn't said a word. He was staring at me with a mixture of curiosity and resentment, like he wasn't sure if he wanted a father or just wanted to punch me. Come inside, I said finally. That's when Rena walked into the kitchen, fresh from her morning shower, and saw 3 strangers sitting at our table. Tom, who are these people? Rena, meet my brother Sam, and Jessica, and apparently my son Danny. If I'd thrown a grenade into the room, the explosion couldn't have been more dramatic. Rena went white, then red, then started screaming. Your son? Your son? How long have you been lying to me? I wasn't lying, I said. I didn't know. Bees! You've been hiding this from me for 16 years. Actually, Sam interrupted, we've been hiding it from him. That didn't help. Rena turned her fury on Sam and Jessica, calling them every name in the book, while Danny sat there looking like he wanted to disappear. The argument went on for an hour. Rena accused me of cheating, lying, and God knows what else. She threatened to take Katie and leave. She said she couldn't trust me anymore. The irony was so thick it was choking me. Finally, I'd had enough. You want to talk about trust? I said quietly. Let's talk about Colin Mercer. Rena froze like I'd slapped her. That's right, I continued. I know about your little afternoon adventures. I know about the hotels, the lies, the whole thing. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, but her voice was shaking. Sure you don't. I pulled out my phone and played Sheila's drunken confession. Rena's face went from red to gray as she heard her best friend spilling every detail of the affair. Sam whistled low. Damn, brother. Your wife's got some balls. Shut up, Sam, I snapped. Jessica was staring at Rena with disgust. You're cheating on him after everything he's done for you? You don't know anything about our marriage, Rena said weakly. I know enough, Jessica replied. I know he's a good man who deserves better. Coming from the woman who'd broken my heart, that meant something. The confrontation ended with Rena storming out, threatening lawyers and custody battles. Sam, Jessica, and Danny left an hour later with a promise to return with DNA test results and medical records. I sat alone in my kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of my carefully planned revenge. Everything was happening too fast, spinning out of control. But maybe that was okay. Maybe chaos was exactly what I needed. I called Elliot and told him about the morning's events. Interesting, he said. This could work in your favor. Your wife's been caught cheating, and now she looks like the bad guy for attacking you over a son you never knew existed. What about the DNA test? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But, Tom, I'd verify everything your brother's telling you. In my experience, family is usually the first to screw you. He was right to be suspicious. When the DNA results came back 3 days later, they showed what I'd already started to suspect. Danny wasn't my son. The dates were wrong, the timeline didn't match, and the lab that did the test had a reputation for creative results if you paid enough. Sam and Jessica had tried to con me, using a sick kid and my guilt over our broken relationship. It was low even for Sam. But their timing had been perfect. Rena's reaction to the fake son revelation had exposed her guilt over the affair. She'd been so busy attacking me for lying that she'd forgotten to hide her own lies. Sometimes the best revenge comes from your enemy's mistakes. I had Elliot document everything, the fake DNA test, Sam's con game, Rena's overreaction. It all went into my growing file of evidence. The trap was almost ready to spring. The abandoned Northgate Mall had been dying for 10 years, but it still made the perfect location for what I had planned. Plenty of parking, multiple exits, and enough acoustic echo to make sure everyone could hear what was coming. I'd been tracking Rena and Colin's movements for weeks. They had a pattern: Tuesday evenings at the Seaside Motel, Thursday lunch at Flanagan's, and Saturday morning business meetings at Colin's condo. But tonight was special. Tonight they were meeting Sheila and Colin's business partner to discuss some kind of investment opportunity. I knew this because I'd been reading Rena's texts for a week. Turns out, when you fix computers as a side business, learning to clone phones isn't that hard. The meeting was set for 7 p.m. in the old food court. They thought they were alone, just 4 conspirators planning their next move. They had no idea they were walking into an ambush. I arrived early and set up in the old Radio Shack, where I had a clear view of the food court through the security gate. Elliot was positioned near the old Sears entrance with his camera. My Aunt Linda was in the parking lot with her car running, our getaway driver and witness. At exactly 7 p.m. they arrived. Rena looked nervous, constantly checking her phone. Colin was his usual cocky self, strutting around like he owned the place. Sheila was drunk already, stumbling and giggling. The fourth person was someone I didn't recognize, a thin man in an expensive suit who screamed, "Out of town money." They sat at one of the old McDonald's tables and spread out papers. From my hiding spot, I could hear every word echoing off the empty walls. "The insurance money will cover the initial investment," Rena was saying. "Tom's too stupid to notice if I move funds around." "What about the divorce?" Colin asked. "I'll take him for everything. The house, the business, custody of Katie. He won't know what hit him." The stranger, apparently Colin's investor, nodded approvingly. "And you're sure he doesn't suspect anything?" "Please," Rena laughed. "He's a carpenter. He thinks I'm working late when I'm screwing Colin in hotel rooms. The man's an idiot." That was my cue. I stepped out of the Radio Shack and walked into the food court, my footsteps echoing like gunshots. They all turned toward me, their faces going through a beautiful progression of surprise, recognition, and terror. "Hello, honey," I said to Rena. "Working late again?" Colin started to stand, but I held up my hand. "Sit down, Colin. We're all going to have a nice chat." "Tom," Rena stammered, "this isn't what it looks like." "Really?" "Because it looks like my wife is planning to steal my money, destroy my business, and take my daughter while screwing her way through the local real estate market." Sheila giggled nervously. The stranger looked like he wanted to run. "You see," I continued, pulling out my phone, "I've been documenting your little affair for weeks. Photos, videos, audio recordings. I even have Sheila here admitting that you've been bragging about Colin's bedroom skills to half the office." I played the recording from Murphy's Tavern. Sheila's drunken voice filled the empty mall, describing Rena's sexual adventures in graphic detail. "I also have recordings of you planning to defraud me, forge documents, and commit perjury in divorce court. That's not just infidelity, folks. That's criminal conspiracy." Colin finally found his voice. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can." I gestured toward the old Sears entrance where Elliot stepped into view, camera in hand. "Say hello to Elliot Hatch, licensed private investigator. He's been documenting your activities for the past month. And hello to Linda Granger," I continued as my aunt appeared from another entrance. "Retired legal clerk and notary public. She's here to witness your confessions." They were trapped, surrounded, with nowhere to run and no way to deny what they'd been caught planning. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, sitting down at their table like I'd been invited to their little meeting. "Rena, you're going to sign divorce papers that give me full custody of Katie and leave you with exactly nothing. Colin, you're going to pay for every hotel room, every dinner, every expense related to your affair. And all of you are going to stay away from my family." "And if we don't?" the stranger asked. "Then these recordings go to the police, the insurance company, the state licensing board, and every social media platform I can find. Your careers will be over, your reputation's destroyed, and you'll probably face criminal charges." The silence stretched out like a held breath. Finally, Rena spoke. "You fool! You planned this whole thing." "I learned from the best," I replied. "You taught me that marriage is just another business transaction. So let's do business." It took 2 hours, but they signed everything. Divorce papers, financial agreements, non-disclosure contracts. By the time we were finished, Rena had agreed to give up any claim to my assets, my business, or my daughter. Colin's real estate license was suspended pending investigation into his fraudulent investment schemes. The stranger, apparently Colin's money launderer, disappeared into the night and was never seen again. Sheila lost her job when the recordings reached her boss. Turned out using company credit cards to fund your friend's affair was against corporate policy. As they walked away into the darkness of the parking lot, defeated and humiliated, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Satisfaction. "Nicely done," Elliot said, packing up his camera. "Though I have to ask, what if they'd called your bluff?" "Who says I was bluffing?" Linda cackled like a witch. "That's my boy. Always have a backup plan." We drove home in convoy, 3 vehicles carrying the architects of Rena's destruction. The mall faded in my rearview mirror, but the memory of their faces when they realized they'd been outplayed would stay with me forever. The trap had worked perfectly. Now came the final act. 3 weeks later, I was standing in my kitchen making breakfast for Katie when Rena showed up at my door. She looked like hell. Unwashed hair, wrinkled clothes, dark circles under her eyes. The confident woman who'd been planning to destroy me had been replaced by a broken shell. "Tom, please," she begged through the screen door. "I need help. I have nowhere to go." "Should have thought of that before you decided to cheat on your husband and steal his money," I replied, not looking up from the eggs I was scrambling. "I made a mistake. I know that now, but I'm still Katie's mother." "No," I said quietly. "You were Katie's mother. Now you're just the woman who abandoned her family for a real estate agent with a fancy car." Katie came downstairs in her school uniform, backpack slung over her shoulder. She looked at Rena through the screen door with the kind of cold assessment that only children can manage. "Hi, Mom," she said with no emotion whatsoever. "Katie, baby, I've missed you so much." "Have you?" Katie asked. "Because you missed my school play, my soccer games, and my birthday party." But I guess Colin was more important. Even I winced at that. My daughter had inherited my talent for cutting straight to the bone. "Katie, you don't understand. I understand that you chose someone else over Dad and me," Katie interrupted, "and now you want us to feel sorry for you because it didn't work out." Rena started crying, but Katie had already turned away. "Dad, can you drive me to school? I don't want to be late." "Of course, sweetheart." I grabbed my keys and walked past Rena without another word. Through the rearview mirror, I watched her standing on my porch, sobbing into her hands. But I wasn't done with her yet. That afternoon, I got a call from Elliot. "You need to see this," he said. "Meet me at Murphy's in an hour." When I arrived, Colin was already there, drunk and belligerent, holding court with whoever would listen to his sob story. "Tom Granger ruined my life," he was saying to anyone within earshot. "Destroyed my career, my reputation, everything. All because his wife chose a better man." "Better man?" I said, sliding onto the bar stool next to him. "Is that what you call someone who seduces married women and steals their money?" Colin spun around, his eyes unfocused with booze and rage. "You son of a witch! You think you won? You think destroying me makes you some kind of hero? I think it makes us even." "Even?" Colin laughed bitterly. "I screwed your wife for 6 months. I made her scream my name while you were at home playing daddy. How's that for even?" The bar went quiet. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. I stood up slowly, calmly, and looked Colin in the eye. "You know what the difference is between you and me?" "What?" "I'm still standing and you're in the gutter." Then I slapped him. It wasn't a punch or a fight, just an open-handed slap across his face that echoed through the silent bar like a gunshot. Colin stumbled backward, more from shock than force, and fell off his bar stool. "You want to ruin a man?" I said, looking down at him sprawled on the floor. "Try harder." I threw a 20 on the bar to cover my drink and walked out while Colin was still trying to figure out what had happened. The next morning brought the final piece of my revenge. Elliot had been digging into Colin's business dealings and discovered something beautiful. Colin hadn't just been sleeping with Rena. He'd been running a con game on her, using her access to insurance records to identify wealthy clients for his fake investment schemes. But the real kicker was that Colin had been planning to disappear with all the money, including Rena's, and start over in Florida with Sheila, who wasn't just Rena's friend, but Colin's actual partner in crime. Rena had been played by a professional, and she never saw it coming. I leaked this information to every contact Rena had left, former friends, coworkers, family members. Within hours, the story was all over social media. Rena wasn't just a cheating wife anymore. She was the sufferer of an elaborate con game, which somehow made her look even more pathetic. The final humiliation came when Colin and Sheila were arrested trying to board a plane to Miami with 2 suitcases full of cash. Turns out, stealing money from insurance companies is a federal crime. I was in my workshop that evening, actually fixing a door for once, when Katie came out to find me. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Why?" "Because Mom came by school today. She wanted to talk to me, but the principal wouldn't let her on campus without permission." I put down my tools and gave Katie my full attention. "What did she want?" "She wanted me to ask you to forgive her. She said she made a mistake and wants to come home." "What did you tell her?" Katie was quiet for a long moment. "I told her that home is where people love you and take care of you and don't lie to you, and that she chose not to live here anymore." I hugged my daughter, this amazing little person who understood loyalty and consequences better than most adults. "I'm proud of you," I said. "I'm proud of you too, Dad. You could have been mean to Mom, but you just made her face the truth." That night, I sat on my porch with a beer, looking out at the neighborhood I'd helped build, house after house, filled with families I'd done work for, people who respected me and trusted me to fix what was broken in their lives. Rena drove by twice, slowing down like she wanted to stop, but she never did. Maybe she finally understood that some things, once broken, can't be fixed. Some nails, once pulled out, leave holes that never quite close. The last I heard, she'd moved back in with her mother in Portland and was working as a clerk at a grocery store. Colin got 3 years for fraud. Sheila got 2 years and a lifetime ban from working in insurance. As for me, I kept fixing things. Doors, cabinets, lives. It's what I do best. But I never had to fix another broken marriage. Turns out, when you get it right the second time, it stays fixed. Katie and I are doing fine. Better than fine, actually. We've got our routines, our inside jokes, our Saturday morning pancake breakfasts. She's growing up strong and smart and completely unimpressed by people who make excuses for bad behavior. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Rena and wonder if she ever figured out that I wasn't the one who destroyed our marriage. I just refuse to let her destroy me. There's a difference. The grandfather clock in the living room still ticks away the seconds, but now it's counting time in a house filled with honesty instead of lies. The tools in my workshop still hang on their pegboard, but they're back to building instead of plotting. And every morning when I wake up, I remember what it feels like to be respected instead of betrayed. Some people might call what I did revenge. I call it justice. I call it standing up for myself and my daughter. I call it refusing to be the sufferer in someone else's selfish story. Rena wanted to see me as a joke, a fool, a man too stupid to notice his wife's betrayal. Instead, she learned that underestimating a man who knows how to plan, how to be patient, and how to use the right tools for the job is the biggest mistake you can make. I watched them all scatter like rats when the lights came on, hunted, humiliated, and completely defeated. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like prey. I felt like the hunter.